This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Tuesday, January the 13th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly, David Williams. He's producing the program. You'll be speaking with David when you pick up the phone to give us a call in the queue and on the air. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So I don't know what it was like in your neck of the woods overnight. Here in the city, so apparently winds topped out at 140 kilometers an hour. Backyard is full of branches. Had a pretty disconnected sleep last night, and I'm sure I'm not alone. I believe Newfoundland Power has restored power to, at one point last night, some 24,000 plus people were without, or pardon me, homes were without power. I believe that's all been restored, so here we go. I was listening to Russell and Jerry Lynn this morning, and he mentioned some of this date in history, and he pointed to 1999, when Michael Jordan announced his second retirement just prior to the start of the lockout shortened season, and of course he came back and finished up with Washington. So it got me thinking about the circumstances of his first retirement. It's one of my favorite sports conspiracy theories, is that when he retired the first time to go play minor league baseball, it was because of gambling. Apparently, this story goes, and I have no idea what veracity is attached to it, but he's a well-known gambler, and of course the biggest name in basketball, probably the biggest name in sports for quite a long time, and so he goes and has his little stint as a minor league baseball player, and then he eventually returns. And of course his first retirement in 1993 was directly associated with his grief in trying to overcome the death of his father. His father was murdered. The allegations at the time that it was directly related to gambling as well. There was no credible evidence ever came forward that his death had anything to do with gambling, just a robbery gone wrong. But that attachment of Michael Jordan and gambling and his first retirement was a big story at the time. Nothing really came of it. And of course, the NBA was not going to turn their back on Michael Jordan. How could they? So anyway, there you go. And as much as I know in so far as hockey goes, we talk about the World Juniors. We're so focusing on individual achievements and points and goals and assists, which is probably to our detriment. But on this date, in 1985, playing in his 436th career game, Gretzky scored his 400th goal. So 435 games to score 400 goals. Amazing stuff. All right. So I was kind of wondering what the status was of the proposal to build a big multi-sport, multicultural facility out in Galway. And apparently still on track. So it's massive. 260,000 square foot sporting facility, 4 NHL-sized ice rinks, a field house where you can play soccer, baseball, basketball, softball. So apparently they're still on track here. I kind of thought it had gone by the wayside a little bit. You remember former Premier Danny Williams said he'd donate 10 acres of land to support this particular facility. So they seem to be still on track to get that going. Now, one question will be, when the Liberal government then earmarked $500,000 in the 2024 budget for the design, work and plan for the new facility, I wonder what the role of the government will be into the future if and when this comes to pass. But people ask me all the time about, what happened with that sports facility in Galway? Well, apparently still on track. All right. I read this story this morning and I wasn't exactly sure what to make of it, but I do know a bunch of retired teachers who are still on the substitute teaching list. And this is about how the numbers have grown. Last year, some 592 retirees subbed a total of 31,791 days. Compare that to 10 years ago, when just 61 teachers worked a total of 1,104 days during the 2015-2016 school year. All right, so obviously we have a big reliance on retirees as substitute teachers. All right. Here's why I'm not even sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing. So, according to a report from the former English School District, there were 2,400 people on the substitute teacher call list available to school administrators in 2015. Fewer than 100 of them were retirees at the time. Currently, there are approximately 1,700 substitutes on the list for NL schools. Based on access to information requests, approximately 600 of them are retirees. Okay, we know things changed during the pandemic, and we know there's issues regarding recruitment and retention, whether it be in healthcare and absolutely in the education system. Okay, during the pandemic, they changed the rules. They were then going to allow retired teachers to substitute in the K-12 school system for up to 90 days without affecting their pension. So apparently, in the retirees that I know, they're able to put in their 25 years, and you can max out for a maximum pension after 30 years of service. But they have figured out that, subbing a day or two a week up to the 90 days on their pension covers their entire salary as when they were working. So when I read the story, maybe Dale Lamb, who's the president of the NLTA, if you'd like to join us this morning, that would be helpful to try to break down as to whether or not the story I read is a good thing or a bad thing. I know that we've heard a lot of teachers leaving the system for a variety of reasons, obviously, but many of them point to the prevalence of violence in schools. So insofar as the retirees being relied upon so heavily as substitute teachers, maybe it's a good thing or maybe it's a bad thing. I'm not really entirely sure, but obviously with the veteran experience that a retiree brings, it can't all be a bad thing. But that said, what does that mean for young people considering profession of teaching as a career? I don't know, but Mr. Lamb, if you're listening, I think he probably is, to join us this morning would be great. All right. We've done some good things in school insofar as body safety curriculum that's now been introduced, which I think is hopefully going to be very, very helpful. And someone sent me this story overnight. Okay. All right, some people get tired of hearing about it, but the role artificial intelligence is playing is massive. Even if we're not fully aware of it, no matter where you turn, the implications and the interaction with AI is very, very real. For youth, it's becoming a revenge tool as well. So it's the whole concept of deep fakes. So basically, you can just get an image of somebody and then can have them sexualized. Like all of a sudden, a picture where you're just in your school clothes, all of a sudden, now you're naked. And of course, it's being used as a form of sextortion. It is a huge problem. So, we have laws in this province and in this country about the non-consensual sharing of intimate images. But the curriculum that they're talking about in the United States, this young girl who was victimized by this, she's now working with a software company to introduce some curriculum so that they can identify the proliferation of artificial intelligence tools. So, insofar as we use Twitter, and there's a AI interactive tool called Grok on Twitter. I've never used it, but it's there and I see it used all the time. And so you can actually sexualize young women or youth using that tool. And when asked about it, Mr. Musk, of course, who owns Twitter, said, well, you can do that on many platforms. That's not really the point, sir. The point is that you can use it on your platform. Now, apparently they've limited access to it for only the paying, subscribing customers, but maybe it's a good idea for young people to be made aware via some of these online training tools, or maybe a portion of the school year associated with AI and how to identify it, how to use it in realistic, pragmatic fashion versus what's becoming apparently a revenge tool. So if you've got some issue in your world, in your life, maybe all you have to do is go to someone's, say, for instance, Facebook page, grab a photo, and all of a sudden you can turn that photo of someone fully clothed into a naked picture and post it online. The world we live in is just mind-boggling. And this big deepfake issue, look, we see it when it surrounds big stories in the news. All of a sudden, depending on people's political leanings, they will manipulate a photo, put it back out there as some sort of evidence to justify what they think or believe or choose to believe. So the role of AI is going to be something else in the future. And I know I think about it and talk about it maybe too much for some people's liking, but c'est la vie. Also, I think it's worth revisiting the story out of Australia with the ban of social media use for those 16 years of age or younger. You see it as much as I do. The reports are out there. The evidence is clear about what it means for people's mental well-being. Social media can be overwhelming, especially when big news makes it to the masses and they dwell on it and they can't get away from it. Look, it's bad enough for adults, but for youth and their still forming identity and minds and hearts and attitudes, I think it's a story worth pursuing a little more than we have. But anyway, what do you think? All right. So yesterday I had a couple of troubling calls about allegations of abuse, children and otherwise. And then overnight received a bunch of emails as to why we don't put out for the listener issues regarding elder abuse. And fair enough, I've done it many times in the past and I'm happy to do it again. The unfortunate reality here, when we talk about the different types of elder abuse, whether it be sexual abuse, neglect, emotional, psychological, financial, physical, or whether they be abandoned, far too often it's as a result of at the hands of family, which is especially sad to say. So recognizing what's going on and trying to identify issues regarding elder abuse in our community is incumbent on all of us to really fully understand what's going on. Then it's the issue regarding your mental well-being and your physical health as it pertains to things like being isolated or lonely. No, so social isolation is basically you have very little or no relationships, contact with, or support from others. Loneliness is different. Loneliness is the feeling of being alone, disconnected, or not close to others. Even if you do indeed have people around you, you can still feel lonely. Many seniors report exactly that, one or the other. And it does come with real distinct mental issues and physical issues. If you are experiencing social isolation or loneliness, it's an increased risk of chronic disease, psychiatric or depressive conditions, long-term disabilities. It happens more sometimes when people are living in an area with limited transportation or language barriers or living in rural areas. So these types of issues, I wonder how we connect the move towards, well, the political conversation regarding aging at home versus being institutionalized in a long-term care setting, for instance. How do we dovetail the two? Because if you are at home, and I think it's further exacerbated in the winter when many people are spending more time at home and maybe apart from others, but we see and understand the risks associated with this. Increased risk of heart disease and stroke, increased risk of type 2 diabetes, increased risk of depression and anxiety, an increased risk of suicidality and self-harm, dementia, earlier death. So let's be mindful of the folks in our community, seniors in particular, who may indeed be experiencing this type of loneliness, may indeed be isolated, because there's a role that I think we can all play here, and it's in our collective best interest. You know, when I hear some of these programs at schools where a class will attach themselves to a long-term care facility and or a seniors group, and they kick in this little bit of pen pal stuff. There's little things I think we can do, because the world is really in a pretty terrible place sometimes, and especially terrible place for some people this day and age. So that issue regarding elder abuse and isolation and loneliness, I'm happy to put it back out there because I think it's part of the conversation. On that front, you know, Connie Pike was on the show yesterday talking about some of the numbers regarding violence against youth, and the numbers are staggering. It's really scary. And then it's issues regarding intimate partner violence. So there's a story in the news today which I think is worthy of more discussion as well. So there's a provincial court judge, and what they say in the top sentence in the story was, the judge issued a stern warning to the RNC to rethink their approach when it comes to dealing with complaints or threats or harassment in intimate partner relationships. Okay. So apparently in this case, when this person and the family came forward and said that the young woman out in Corner Brook was being harassed by her ex-boyfriend. And then as opposed to doing an investigation, the police recommended a peace bond. And Judge Gorman goes on to say, unfortunately, this is not unusual. All right. We understand the issue regarding domestic violence, intimate partner violence, and it's unfortunately very, very real, and the prevalence is sickening. It is incumbent upon law enforcement when allegations of abuse, whether it be of minors and or allegations of intimate partner violence, it really does require an investigation. Sometimes a peace bond may indeed be the next logical step, but a peace bond is only worth anything if the person with the bond is taken out against abides by it. But we know that's not the case more often than not. Same thing associated with bail. Bail for someone who's been accused of intimate partner violence, maybe, just maybe, heightens the possibility for more and more increased and more severe violence. So for the RNC, and this is not for me, this is coming from Judge Gorman, is these types of allegations do require an investigation. You cannot shrug it off and say, well, your best bet is to go get a peace bond. No, the best bet is for the police to investigate and then take the next steps, whether that be charges, or whether that be peace bonds, or whether that be strict restrictive orders. But can't be shrugging these things off. We see the stories. It's far too common, and law enforcement has to change their tact on this particular front. Your thoughts, absolutely welcome. All right, a couple of quick ones before we get to you. So I don't know what brought it on, but got some pretty harshly worded emails overnight calling me a bunch of names, which is perfectly fine, but it's about apparently what they think I said or whatever about pipelines from Alberta. I think what they latched onto was the fact that, we're talking about approvals for a pipeline. The pipeline is just mythical at this point. There is no pipeline proposal. I don't know. I think that's what they're probably mad at. But then they attached a story that was in the National Post, and there's a conversation we should be having about some of these organizations. But it's a story, and the headline is, Pierre Poilievre said he would build pipelines against First Nations objections. Just a couple of things. If a private sector company wants to come forward and build a pipeline, then I guess the process will unfold. But what I don't understand is even suggestions like that from Mr. Poilievre, who's obviously campaigning to keep his seat as the leader or keep his role as the leader. Private sector companies need stability, right? So when you have someone who says that they're not going to consult First Nations, and if First Nations object, they're just going to say who cares and build a pipeline, you know what's going to be the end result there? Court challenges. And so that lack of stability is probably going to scare away some investment. I mean, we saw investors leave the province of Quebec when they talked about separation. I think the same thing is happening in Alberta. If the separatists get their way, man, who's going to come to town to try to build a pipeline, especially if we're talking about building it west of the BC coast? And the same thing with Mr. Poilievre. This is begging for a court challenge. And that's exactly what's going to happen. But yet that seems to be the tact that they're taking in Alberta. And look, I hope the province never separates from the country. I truly do. But I'm not so sure where the fury comes from regarding my stance, which I don't really have one, on pipelines, because there is no actual proposal in place. And then it's the concept of who's going to pay for it. We all chipped in some $33 billion to twin the Trans Mountain pipeline to the BC Tidewater. So are we talking about taxpayers paying for another pipeline? Really? Are taxpayers going to get involved, say, for instance, in this province with the Beta Nord project? And I mean taxpayers from around the country. For instance, regarding the hundreds of millions of dollars that are going to have to be paid as a result of Article 82 at the United Nations Land of the Law of the Sea? I doubt it. But boy, they were pretty crooked with me via email about pipelines. My simple question is, what pipeline? If there's a proposal, then we can latch onto it and have a conversation about it. All right, didn't get any uptake on it yesterday, but Prime Minister Carney off to Beijing today to try to, what they call, recalibrate relationships with China. It's been almost a decade since the Canadian Prime Minister has been in China. And then there's a trip pending to India. Apparently that's going to happen sometime after the budget in India is tabled on the 1st of February. So those types of big conversations are 100% welcome here on the program, but get some people saying, how can we possibly do business with China? Well, at the exact same time, people talk about diversification for markets. China, big economic superpower, maybe, just maybe, there is an opportunity. We're the largest exporter of canola in the world. China, the largest importer of canola in the world. So there's maybe a conversation there. The same thing could be said about energy. So anyway, there you go. Last one, promise. Couple of people picked up on this and say maybe I glossed over too quickly the 31-year deal we've entered into back in 2014 with China called FIPA, the Foreign Investment Promotion and Protection Agreement. It happened in secrecy. It took a couple of years to ratify, and the big question is whether or not we see any tangible benefit from this 31-year deal that we're locked into. At the beginning, basically what we got was a couple of pandas and some photo opportunities of the pandas munching on their gourmet bamboo. But here's a couple of things associated with FIPA that people I don't think pay much attention to, and it's been engaged a couple of times since it was signed and ratified back in 2014. We're locked in for an entire generation. If Canada finds the deal unsatisfactory, it cannot be cancelled completely for 31 years. Here was some of the reviews back in the day. The benefits of China far outweigh the benefits of Canada because there's a clause allowing existing restrictions in each country to stay in place. Chinese companies get to play on a pretty level playing field in Canada while maintaining wildly arbitrary practices for rules for Canadian companies operating in China. Chinese companies are able to seek redress against any laws passed at any level of government in Canada which threatens their profits. Australia was part of the conversation at the time. They backed out. They decided not to sign on here. All right. In addition to that, the powerful Chinese corporations can challenge legislation on social, environmental, and economic issues. Chinese companies invested heavily in Canadian energy will be able to seek billions of dollars in compensation if their projects are hampered by any provincial laws on any issue regarding First Nations and or environmental issues. The cases of disputes will be decided by a panel of arbitrators, and they can be kept in secret at the discretion of the sued party. These are extraordinary provisions, and it's reflected in the lack of transparency, and this was a deal that we are involved in and we cannot get out of for 31 years. And here we are at the same time talking about recalibrating or renewing relations with China. And of course then going to India, and yes, the Prime Minister will indeed be going to Qatar and then stopping at Davos to speak at the World Economic Forum, where the keynote speaker is President Trump. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. That means you're in the queue. Topic, up to you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's begin this morning on line number one, saying good morning to the president of the Lewis Portland Area Chamber of Commerce. That's Pauline Snow. Hi, Pauline. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you doing, and Happy New Year?
Happy New Year to you as well. I'm doing fine. How about you?
Not bad. Normally, Patty, when you hear from me, it's usually some issue that's going on in my business. But this morning, I've got an issue. I guess I can say the only way I figure I might get an answer is if I go on Open Line, talk to you. For years here in Lewisport, and our MHA's, where our MHA's office is located, we have a big building. It used to be the Marine Atlantic one, where everybody would wait for the boats that were going to Labrador. Now, for the last 10 or 15 years, those offices on the back of the MHA's offices have been empty. Heat and lights on, but empty. At least, ever since the boats have gone from Labrador, or gone from Lewisport. So, as the president of the chamber, we didn't have a physical address. So I went to the government and I said, listen, can we have that building as a physical address? It would be perfect for us. And that was last spring. In September at our AGM, I had Minister Lovelace and I had our MHA at the moment, Derek Bennett, announced that we were given that lease for 2 years. No problem. Now, when I got a copy of the lease, which wasn't signed, by the way, there was a couple issues that had to be changed, like Her Majesty the Queen had to be changed to Her Majesty the King. And one other line had to come out. Now, that's September, early September. That was before the writ was dropped, anything. So it was a done deal. We are still not in that building right now. The lease didn't get signed. We changed governments, but I thought I was being smart. I sent an email to our new premier, and I told him, I said, what the situation was, and I have a piece of paper in front of me that says, I can assure you that I do not intend to cancel the funding for the lease and all that. They do great work, and I intend to help you succeed. I got that from Premier Wakeham on paper, on email. To date, I have not seen a signed lease. I cannot put insurance on the building so that we have to co-insure the town plus the government, which is fine. But until the lease is signed, I can't get the insurance. Until the insurance is in place, I can't get us into the building. I'm pretty well, I won't say at the end of my rope, we're really, really disappointed that things are going like they are. But I have sent letters to Premier Wakeham. The letter that came from him saying that he would back us up was October the 5th. And he didn't go into office until the latter part of September. I sent another letter on December the 5th, which I have no reply from. I sent one to him. I sent one to Minister Lovelace at the time. And I'm sitting there now with the lease in front of me. It's still not signed, and I don't know where to go. They're saying it's got to go through the channels, but it shouldn't have to go through the channels, Patty. This was a done deal and was given to us at our AGM on September the 9th.
Yeah, so what channels are there?
I don't know. I have talked to my MP. I have talked to our MHA. They're saying it's got to go through the channels into cabinet. And, I mean, this was a done deal before the PCs even went into power. I don't know why it wasn't just signed and sent back to us. We've lost 5 months on this lease right now, ever since the lease was supposed to be from September. Now we're into the middle of January, and we still don't have a lease that's signed. I didn't know. This was my last resort. I didn't know where else to go. I have left 2 messages with the Premier's the lady in the office, and I haven't got any answer. I have sent an email to the Premier's office, and I haven't got an answer, even to say we've received your email. And Minister Lovelace is all there thinking he was done because he thought this was already a done deal and out of the way. And he was checking into it, but now he's also in opposition now, so that's hard to know what to do. So I just didn't know what to do, and I said, well, I'm going to give Patty a call, and maybe somebody out there listening with the government might be able to put the wheels in motion so that this can be done, since we've been waiting since September now to get into this building.
Well, hopefully this call can light a fire under somebody. I'm not even sure what other channels need to be navigated if this was, in your words, a done deal already.
Yeah, that's the problem. When I went to Minister Lovelace and said, do you realize that we are not in that building yet? He said, but this was a done deal and announced at your AGM. He said, there's no reason why this wasn't just signed and sent out to you. And I said, well, when I got a copy of the lease, well, Patty, under the CGL policy, the liability policy, you have to co-insure your government and your town, and that's fine. But they had it written, Her Majesty the Queen. And I picked up on it and said, well, that needs to be changed to King. And there was one other line that had to come out and needed to be removed because of the insurance legalities. And that's all that had to be done. And this was early September. I mean, you could have done it in 5 minutes, Patty. Just took out those two lines, sent it out, signed it, and sent it out. And I still, like I said, I really don't know where to go with it. Minister Lovelace was just astounded that it wasn't a done deal. I mean, it was done and announced at our AGM in September.
Pauline, let me give it a little chase.
Where to go.
Yeah, let me chase it a little bit today, see if I can't help.
I would appreciate it because I think I've done every avenue that I can possibly go. We have our chamber meeting again on Thursday. And I mean, this chamber is starting to move in leaps and bounds. We've gone from 30 businesses to over 86 businesses in town. So we are really on the move right now. And as a member of the Atlantic Chamber also, I'm trying to do what I can to move our town forward. But it's things like that kind of hold you back because there are so many things we could do if we were in that building. Right now we're dependent on somebody else and another building in order to have a meeting, you know, and have to book in the time for it. If we had our own place, oh goodness gracious, the things that we could accomplish, right?
Sounds like it. I will give this a little bit of attention when I get a moment this morning, Pauline, but thanks for making time for the show. Keep me in the loop.
Not a problem. Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I will. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. It's Pauline Snow, President of the Lewisporten Area Chamber of Commerce. Going to try to get the break here on time, and Darryl wants to talk about power bills, pretty popular subject, and just saw it float in, and the subject line is pretty telling, and I hear from this person frequently, and it's about the so-called left ownership of media in this country and in North America. And I think that, I mean, it's a misnomer and it's a fallacy no matter how you slice it. I mean, I made reference to the Toronto Sun's Ottawa bureau chief and what he had said about the ICE shooting in the United States. And it was pretty gross. But the vast majority of media in Canada and the United States is not owned by whatever people consider the left, or the whole left-right conversation is tedious at the very best of times. But like even the Sun newspapers, the National Post and Post Media, I mean, that's an American-owned and operated company. So I just don't know where people are coming from. You could talk about Global and CTV, and yes, the taxpayers do fund CBC, as they always have, as a public broadcaster. But the big sphere of influence we see, whether it be on network television, social media platforms, or what have you, I mean, let's just be honest with ourselves. The vast majority of the ownership is whatever people can define as the right of the political spectrum. The Ellison boys, they own CBS, CBS News, Paramount, TikTok, Pluto, Zuckerberg and his media or meta empire, the Murdochs, with their outright ownership of Fox, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Post, the Sinclair crowd, whether it be NBC affiliates, Sun newspapers, the Washington Post owned by Jeff Bezos. Give me a break that these people are whatever the left is these days. Alphabet Inc., billionaire donors into the right side of the political spectrum in the United States. Musk, Twitter, Apple, Sam Altman, ChatGPT and others. These are not people on whatever people define these days as the left and the right, which again, we've gone so far down that rabbit hole that it dominates conversations, and it basically has become people's own identity, is whether it's left or right or what have you. So I just never understand where that argument comes from about this left-dominated media landscape, because it's simply demonstrably just not really true. All right, let's get a break. And when we come back, Power Bills is in the queue, and then you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go. Line number 2. Daryl, you're on the air.
Oh, hi, Patty. How are you doing today?
Very well. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing good. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me on your show. You're doing a good job as per usual. Patty, what I want to talk about is the power bills as it's a topic of everybody, and most everybody's power bills have doubled. And I'm going to go back in time, and I'm going to lead up to something here. I put a heat pump in just over a year ago, and when I put it in, I said, what tremendous savings I was having. The heat pump was really cutting down on the hydro bill and whatever. And that's just over a year ago. But now my last light bill, it doubled, and that's with the heat pump. So Newfoundland Power and all these agencies are promoting like cut energy, save energy. So most people are doing what they can with heat pumps and insulation and so forth. But what I'm going to lead up to is that there needs to be an investigation done to Newfoundland Power, the Public Utilities Board as well, because Newfoundland Power on an average now are making, $4 million profit a month. You could research it yourself. I stand to be corrected. So how do the Public Utility Board, all they're good for is approving rate increases like they did to 7%. So I think an investigation needs to be done to the Public Utility Board, see how other jurisdictions are operating with a Public Utility Board or without one. And this is what the new government needs to investigate all these avenues, because, I mean, you can't go bleeding blood out of a turnip. And so, so it's just something's really got to be done with all this.
So what are you suggesting, that the PUB should not be involved in adjudicating rate applications?
Well, the PUB was appointed 25 years ago by Roger Grimes. But what I'm trying to say is an investigation needs to be done to the Public Utility Board, see how effective they're being, like compared to other jurisdictions. Other jurisdictions got Public Utility Boards, some don't. So what needs to be done, investigate, see what is working better, because all the pub is doing, they're approving rate increases when Newfoundland Labrador Power is making profits per month. So how do you adjust a 7% increase like you did last July when you're making a $4 million a month profit? And,
I'm not so sure that's an accurate number, but let me just, for starters, I'm not going to defend the PUB by no stretch of the imagination. I think there's a conversation to be had about the PUB's role in setting the price of fuels, but insofar as, like, every province in the country has a regulator regarding utilities, and I think there's a reason for that. And again, this is not a justification for the role of the Public Utilities Board, but that July 1st rate bump of 7%, the actual ask was, I think, 10.3%. So had there been no regulator there to evaluate a rate application, then we, of course, would have seen a bigger jump in rates. So I think the fuel conversation is different than the power conversation, but there's got to be a regulator regarding utilities. I mean...
Well, yeah, okay, to a degree. Okay, they look for 10.3%, got 7%, but that's a good negotiating tool. Probably that's all they wanted. They said, we'll go high, and we got what we wanted. That's all probably part of the tactics. Yes, when it comes to energy and fuel and all that stuff, again, I'm saying is do an investigation, see how other jurisdictions are working, because some parts of the country are cheaper than what we are. And I think we're probably, I stand to be corrected, and you can research it, we're probably we could be one of the highest in the country when it comes to hydro bills, and we got all the assets on our doorstep. And another thing I'm going to bring up as well, the Liberal government was in power for the past 10 years, and they're saying now, okay, eliminate the tax on the hydro bill, which is great. But how come they didn't do it while they're in power? Now they're opposition. Now they're saying it should be eliminated, which is good. But it's no good to eliminate the tax, and then if you're getting increases to your hydro bill, it's still not going to balance out.
Yeah. A few things. There's, of course, different price per kilowatt across the country, no doubt about it. We don't have it the most expensive, though. PEI in Nova Scotia much higher than it is in this province. Even if, so what's it, 14.25? I think Nova Scotia is like 18.3. PEI is maybe even a little bit more than that, 18.4. Lowest, of course, in the country, of course, is Quebec. But that's a tiered issue. They kind of evaluate their power a little bit differently than us, and I think there's a big conversation there regarding how they factor it into equalization. But in Quebec, it's around 8 cents if you look across the board on a means or a median. So, yeah, when compared to us, they are much, much cheaper. I think in BC, it's around 11 cents. I can't remember what I saw as it pertains to Alberta. But anyway, yes, we are not the highest, but we're middle of the packish.
Yeah, you're right. We are in the middle, and like Quebec is, they're offering cheap. When you look at that's probably the backs of Newfoundland and Labrador due to the Upper Churchill. I'll just say that in general. So that's something. So that's why they got for cheap because of the Upper Churchill. Well, that's another story. Pretty well, what I'm saying is that like this, the government. I'm not saying dismantle anything or whatever, but what I'm saying he wants to investigate Newfoundland Power, see what's going on behind the scenes, and just investigate the Public Utility Board and how they are doing things. And I think this needs to be really taken a good hard look at because, I mean, this is getting crazier and crazier, and so why is everybody's light bills double? Oh yeah, they come out and make these excuses about the weather and the high winds. But to me, is no different than last year. This time, you still had, we probably got more snow this time of year than last year. But still, how do you come up with these excuses? I was listening to Newfoundland Power, and more heat you produce, then sometimes you lose more. I listen to all different scenarios, but it don't wash for me. But I'm just summing up in general is that we need an investigation done on both entities. And then we could take a look at, okay, what's the right path to take? And I'm encouraging the Tony Wakeham government, the new government, they just got in power, so it takes a bit of time for them to get things done. I understand that as well, but just investigate it and see what's really going on, what's happening with all this. I mean, everybody can't be wrong.
I don't think anybody said everybody was wrong. I appreciate the time, Darrell. Thanks for the call.
Yeah, and thank you, Patty, for having me on your show, and all the best to you and the staff at VOCM and your listening audience, and have a great finish to your day.
The very same to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. All right, George, you say right there, I'm going to keep my 100% track record of hitting the break on time here this morning. Dave rolls his eyes. George also wants to talk about Newfoundland Power, but from a different angle. Don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Interesting question about the PUB. Look, we do indeed see a disconnect between how prices for fuels are regulated and changed in other provinces, even in Atlantic Canada, versus this province. And it really amazed me when the PUB was out there asking the general public about proposed changes to how they evaluate the price of fuels. So it was clear there was going to be a different and higher price in more rural, remote parts of the province versus, say, for instance, around St. John's in the metro region. Very little uptick on this show. They changed the formula, and the result is pretty clear, and yet I put it out there countless times, and nobody really picked up on it. But anyway, we can talk about the PUB if we're so inclined. Let's see if we got a clearer connection with George on 3. George, you're back on the air.
Yeah, how am I sounding now, Paddy?
Sounding great. Go right ahead.
Yeah, Paddy, no, the reason I called in is because of the lack of maintenance on the lines by Newfoundland Light and Power. I have pictures of trees on my phone that I took that is inches away from the wires. Every time they sway, they're coming closer and closer to the wires. As soon as we get some breeze of wind, we lose our power. It's about 6-7 times we lost power on the Eastport Peninsula since September. And what the easements that they got cut is just like trenches in the trees. And there's the trees towering up over the power lines. I mean, you got no other choice but lose your power. I mean, I can stand up in one particular place. I can stand up and put my hand on the light pole and put my other hand stretched out on a tree that's 30 feet high. I mean, these lines hasn't been cut. 30-foot trees don't grow overnight.
Well, they don't. You're right. And from my own personal experience, in my backyard and in every backyard in my neighborhood, the trees are right up against the power lines. I've called Newfoundland Power about it. They recommend 3 feet gap between trees and branches and the primary power lines. But I have a maple tree in my backyard where it branches off about 10 feet off the ground. And one huge part of the tree is on one side of the wire and the other part of the tree on the other side of the wire. Like the wires are going through that particular tree. And it's just remarkable that it hasn't caused the neighbourhood to lose power with these types of windstorms. So it used to be that I could call Newfoundland Power, they come out and cut away the branches. And I don't know why that isn't a thing anymore. There is a tree trimming drop box on their website, but I don't know what the process is.
Teddy, on the last power outage that we had a crew there that was brought out from St. John's. And I went to and spoke to the worker there, and I said, look, the problem is out here. These trees are hitting the line. They went out there with the bucket, they cut the top off one tree, and they left the rest there. I mean, that's negligence. Negligence on Newfoundland Hydro or Light and Power, whoever's responsible there for not doing it. And I mean, if they don't, like our government now, with adverse conditions, have changed and put in larger culverts for more rain and everything else. Newfoundland Power has to adapt to the weather changes and the high winds and make their more, if there's trees there that can reach them lines, they should be cut. If not, they're negligent on doing their job.
Well, that being said, Newfoundland Power will tell you clearly they are not responsible to maintain the distance of trees to wires on your property. So they say you have to hire a qualified contractor to take care of it. But, I mean, I would imagine there's probably some contractors out there too who are pretty wary of cutting branches or trees around primary power wires as well. So, but Newfoundland Power will say they are not responsible to maintain the trees and or the distance of trees from wires on your property. Whether or not that's a good thing.
They got a certain distance that they cut each time, and I mean that distance is them easements is not wide enough for the trees that they got. And in a lot of places, I mean, on the Eastport Peninsula and in Charlottetown, there we're double hit because our power lines go through the park, and we've had problems for years with power outages caused by trees dropping on the park, and now we got same problem off the park, which is we lose our power and we're one of the last ones to get it back. And I mean, we've lost it for 20 hours. We had it gone again last night. Well, last night was only a short time for a couple hours. But if they don't correct the problems on these easements, then every time it blows, we're without power.
I know where you're coming from. The question I would ask is for the time and cost of repairing some of these lines that can be taken down by a fallen tree. Compare that to Newfoundland Power continuing to have some sort of tree trimming program. So I don't know when it is that it stopped, but they clearly will tell you they are not responsible to maintain the trees on your property. But I think about it all the time when the wind starts to blow, because I just mentioned what my backyard looks like. The wires are going through the tree. It's not that they're close, they're going right through the tree.
Yeah, but see, Patty, like the last time we had a power outage, I don't know what happened this time, they brought workers out of St. John's, okay? You'd think it would be cheaper to maintain the lines than it would be to bring these workers from all over the province to try to correct the problem.
Understood.
After it happens.
Yeah,
you know, it's not giving service. They're not servicing the people that they're providing the electrical power to. That's one thing for sure. And not only that, I called yesterday. I was talking to a lady. I was upset. Yeah, I was upset because the problem could have been fixed the last time, and it wasn't. And I asked who the supervisor was to speak to a supervisor, a number for a supervisor, and I was told there's a different supervisor every day. Now, that don't add up. I mean, they're just copping out on dealing with the people for sure.
I know where you're coming from, George. I appreciate and understand the concern.
Okay, thank you, Patty.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
All right.
Yeah, I'm always amazed, knock on wood, that it's not more frequent in our neighborhood, because we back onto a green space and virtually every single backyard has a tree. And this is a pretty old, mature neighborhood with massive big maple trees. They're absolutely up against the wire, and in my own backyard circumstance, the wires go right through the tree. So Anyway, but Newfoundland Power, and it says pretty clearly on the website, I don't know the exact phrasing of it, but they're now responsible to maintain the trees on your property. They give a recommendation about 3 feet of separation between your trees and the branches and the power lines. Then they actually, I believe they have some guidance regarding communication wires and guy wires and what have you. But anyway, yeah, there you go. And that cost-benefit analysis would be an interesting one to entertain. I know if they had full responsibility to keep trees away from wires for all of their customers in the province, that would be a pretty big undertaking, I would think. Same thing, and I've had thrown this out there. We've invited Keith Sullivan on from the aquaculture industry and other proponents or operators in the aquaculture industry about whether or not we've actually entertained the cost comparisons of trying to deal with the enormous die-offs that we saw last year, whether it be about sea lice or whether it be about water temperatures or whatever the case may be. Compare that to what would be the cost to bring the operations on shore where they have full control of water temperature or what have you. So, yeah, and that wasn't a condemnation of industry. That was a simple mathematical question. What is it costing these companies, whether it be with increased insurance premiums or simply operational losses? Compare that to what would be the increased cost in bringing those open pens in the bays to bring them on shore. And once again, that's not about whether or not people think aquaculture is good or bad, because even Malwee's East Coast representative has said he's been in the industry for 40 years, and last year was the worst he's ever seen. But later on in the article, also said this is normal. So it can't be both, but I wonder what that math actually looks like. All right, let's get a break. And I mentioned one of the stories off the top of the program about the reliance in the K-12 education system on retirees. The number of retirees substituting in the schools has grown dramatically in the last 10 years. Dale Lamb is the president of the NLTA. He joins us, and then you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 1. Say good morning to the president at the Newfoundland and Labrador Teachers Association. That's Dale Lamb. Good morning, Dale. You're on the air.
How are you this morning?
I'm not too bad at all. How about you?
Not bad at all, thank you.
Just a very quick question about the story I read regarding retired teachers who were substituting. I didn't know, my takeaway was I didn't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing. What is it?
It's not a good thing, Patty. When you look at it, it's having the retired teachers go into those substitute positions. We're grateful to the retired teachers who've shown their professionalism and care for their students and colleagues by returning. But really, it's a stopgap solution to what's a longer-term issue here, is that we need to be looking at retention and recruitment here in education. So not a good story. Good news that, they were willing to help us in difficult situations, but not good in looking at how our system should be operating and the sustenance of that system.
Is the root issue here that during the pandemic, when they expanded the number of days a retired teacher could work without impacting their pension?
That wouldn't be what I'd identify as the root issue. If you look back, the last 10 or 15 years, the landscape for substitute teaching has certainly changed. At one point, Patty, it was a pathway to gaining, full-time employment within the profession. Without that guarantee of gaining full-time employment, then, the substitute teachers, currently trained teachers, they're looking elsewhere in order to get that work. And we need to be recruiting those individuals, if they've gone through the training programs, in order to get them into the system and to service our students as best as we can.
And just for context, in case people didn't hear me off the top of the show this morning, so last year, 592 retirees subbed a total of 31,791 days. 10 years ago, 61 retired teachers worked a total of 1,104 days. So it has changed dramatically. So how do we approach this issue insofar as retention goes, or even recruitment? Because it's hard to put some of these genies back in the bottle.
And the thing is, government needs to be looking at these numbers really hard right now. Working conditions are very important. And what we're referencing here in our province today in Newfoundland and Labrador, it's an issue that's happening right across our nation. So government needs to look at this, and they need to see opportunity. If you improve the working conditions, then teachers will find it more appealing to enter the substitute workforce or the teaching force here in the province. And, that can only strengthen our system. by continuing to rely on our retired subs, once again, being grateful for the service that they've offered. It's not really helping us meet our maximum educational goals in our province.
So there's mention in the story as well about some of the reasons why people may have left the profession, and there's a specific mention of violence. I suppose we do an exit interview with doctors and nurses. Do we do it with teachers to understand, all the contributing causes as to why people leave before retiring age?
And violence is a major factor, like your working conditions. And Patty, you've heard me say it before, the working conditions for our teachers, they're the learning conditions for our students, and that's really important to the future. That violence has really changed significantly over the last number of years. So if you're a substitute teacher, for example, and you've got a choice, between working in another industry right now or facing a day where there's intensified hatred in your classroom or in the school setting, well, you're going to choose the easier of the two. So those working conditions are really, really significant, and government needs to look at that. Also, I'll talk again about complexity in the classroom. Our classrooms are not heterogeneous anymore. We have a lot of needs within those rooms. So, in speaking to a number of high schools, you've heard numbers like 41 in a class. Yourself, you don't need to do research to know that less people to teach is going to result in better results for the students. But in this case, those classrooms with these upward numbers, they're really complex. There's a lot of needs in there, a lot of social emotional needs. There could be, situations whereby they don't have English as a first language, and then you're trying to make sure that you meet those needs. And it's positive we've become more diverse, Patty, but that diversity has led to that complexity in our current classrooms here in the province.
No doubt. So last year there was, I think, $20 million put forward to hire some 400 additional professionals to work in the K-12 system. Can you give us an idea of the status of the progress there?
Well, what I can say is that they have been recruiting for those positions. I don't have exact numbers here in front of me right now, Patty. That'd be information that government would hold. But a lot of those units were given to lowering class sizes in grade 1 to 9 English classes. So we can always look for opportunities to grow, and government needs to continue to look at those class sizes and how that funding can help invest in a better future by allowing our teachers to meet their goals more effectively.
I'm not sure how to couch this question. I'm doing my best here. So we've changed a lot about how we evaluate where a student is, regarding exams and the way we test and those types of things. But a new complicating factor in the world of education is artificial intelligence. We know the students are using it. I mean, it is not difficult to manipulate, and whether it be to try to produce an essay or a report or whatever the case may be, what are teachers saying to you about how they're trying to deal with the artificial intelligence issue? Because full well it's being used and widely used.
And Patty, this is an example of where professional learning for our teachers is paramount. They need to understand artificial intelligence. If they're tasked with making sure that students are prepared for the future, they're going to have to be a part of that and get some meaningful, professional learning around how artificial intelligence looks in their classroom. We've seen there's not just students using artificial intelligence, government agencies or outside groups have used artificial intelligence as well. And if it's moving that rapidly, it's very important for our professionals, our teachers, and our teaching and learning assistants to be able to keep on top of that trend in order to make sure that we meet the needs for our students most effectively.
Yeah, because if I was a teacher, I wouldn't know what to do with it. I saw one educator, and this was an American story, but it went something like this. So the teacher acknowledges that the students are going to use large language models, ChatGPT or otherwise. So upon submitting their work, the next question they're being asked is prove whether or not what you put forward is accurate or not, because it's not accurate all the time. So we can have a lot of work produced by ChatGPT where you don't understand the material, you can't regurgitate the material, and it might not even be accurate what you're submitting.
Yeah, and Patty, you are once again, it's another complexity for our profession, and that's why professional learning is a solution in this case. But government really needs to be looking at all of our conditions, including our teacher training, in order to prepare our young people for the future here in this province.
Anything else you'd like to add this morning, Dale?
No, I've covered everything. Once again, I can't reiterate enough the importance there of class size and composition and how complex those classrooms are. So, continued funding and looking at that in order to lower those class sizes is very, very important if we're to improve our system and to make it more appealing so that people do come in and choose teaching as a profession here.
Appreciate your time. Thanks for doing it, Dale.
All right. Thank you very much, Patty. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. That's Dale Lamb, President at the NLTA. When we kind of changed our tune about the structure of the K-12 system, and we talked about the inclusive model, which is the complicating factor here when we're talking about class composition, conceptually speaking, it just sounds like it makes sense, right, for everyone to be inside the exact same system as opposed to splintered schools for different members in society, regardless of we're talking about behavioral issues or mental health related issues or being on the neurodivergent spectrum or whatever the case may be. It sounds good, but it's not working. And I hate to think that we're going to have conversations where we say, no, you simply can't be in this classroom with the rest of the so-called quote-unquote normal average student. But if we're going to have an inclusive model, then it has to work for everybody in that classroom, including those who need additional support and for those who don't necessarily need additional support. So it's going to take the political will to have that conversation. But for politicians, they're going to make this calculation. If we start talking about reimagining the system, then people who are in need of additional support, those families are going to say, hey, you can't ostracize or isolate us. We deserve the same approach to education as everyone else in the system. And they're not wrong, but unless we can support it with all of the required, whether it be emotional support or mental support or reading or mathematics or whatever the case may be, if we're not doing it, or people who are deaf, the Carter Churchill story, you thought that would have set the precedent into the future. If they went through the human rights tribunal, and it came out the other side where there was not only compensation afforded to the Churchills, but we learned quite clearly that Carter was sitting in silence and learning virtually nothing. So you would have thought that that would be the exact same guiding principle that other families would take. Hey, my son or daughter is not getting the support they need in school, and consequently they're not getting an education. But it didn't seem to be much more than a one family related story, when in fact it should have been representative of every family and every child in the system who needs some additional support. You get it right in education, you get it right in a lot of facets of life. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 2. Jason, you're on the air.
Hey, Paddy, how are you doing today, boy?
Doing okay. How about you?
Oh, I'm best kind. I just called in follow up on an email I sent your way yesterday there regarding the state of Markland Road, the gravel section. Route 81 basically is headed south from the end of Markland, the community of Markland, to Colonette. I live on that road. I've been there now for over 10 years. Myself, my wife, my family, we decided to move out there. That's a place where I kind of grew up out there in Whitburn, but I moved to Markland with the anticipation of having some peace and a beautiful place to live, because it is a beautiful community in there where I am. And I just got to talk about the road, boys. It's unbelievable, actually. I call in at least once, sometimes twice a year. I call your show, and thank God that you have this show for me to call in and voice my thoughts on it. But the road has been in some pretty bad states, but I got to tell you, I don't know if ever I've seen it so bad as what it is right now. This past year, they set out some allocations to get some of the road done. But they really, really fell short. The contractor's done an amazing job. They left out, the provincial government, the Department of Transportation and Works, they left out 1 kilometre of the road that they didn't touch. They have 1 kilometre of the road right now, Paddy. To travel out over that road, my wife cannot go out over that road in her car, simply because the potholes are so deep, she will hit the bottom and do damage to the bottom of her car. There's ruts in the road, and when I got home yesterday evening from work, they got pylons put in the ruts to show you that basically the ruts are there. The ruts are well over a foot deep. The road is soft. All it is clay that's built on the road there. It's been there forever. It's never been touched to upgrade. I just wonder, when is this going to end? Every year, this is the same old, and it's so simple to fix. My solution to it is, and I'm sure as a lot of people are aware, when the winter time you get ice, and you're going to get it on a gravel road, of course. But there's no good to put salt on a gravel road. salt is only going to soften up the ground, and then you're back to square one again. Like, they got the road. You can't drive over it in a truck. You can't drive over it in a car. Like, it is unbelievable. I've never seen such deplorable state of a road in my life. And I've been right across this country. I've been from here to Alberta and back again. And I've been up in northern Canada. I've been all over. I have never, ever seen anything so deplorable as what the state of this road is right now.
I have traveled that road in the past, not in the recent past, but I have been on that road, and at that time it was bad. And the pictures that you sent along, it's hard to believe that's an actual travelable road. I mean, the one picture of the ruts, it looks like on either side, the rut is like 2 feet deep. And then there's one long shot you've given us where no matter who you are, you cannot avoid the potholes. They are from shoulder to shoulder, and they are everywhere. It's unbelievable pictures.
The holes in the road, the potholes, I kid you not, those holes, every one of them are between 4 and 8 inches deep. Like, unless you're in a full-size truck or SUV and crawl. Now, Paddy, I understand gravel roads. You're not going to have it. It's not going to be like pavement. It can't be. But there's no good for anyone under God's sun to tell me that there's any kind of maintenance or eyes on that road. I don't care. Listen, full kudos to the transportation and Department of Transportation works, the workers. They're only doing what they're told. But I'm also been told that there's a supervisor who drives over that road every day from Colonnette to Markland pavement and back again. There's no way you can tell me that he don't see the holes. I don't care if you went in there blindfolded or know him in a bubble. You cannot get away from the holes. Like, what are they trying to do? Like, to me, I'm not saying this is intentional, but boy, I'll tell you what, I don't know how to look any other way about it. And again, it's not the poor workers. It's the ones that are the ones that are setting the direction. Like, the 2026 bike, come on, like, enough.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at one picture here now where, say, for instance, I suppose it's taken through the windshield and you're heading in one direction.
Yeah.
The vehicles that would be coming in the other direction, there's a pothole that looks like it's about 10 feet long. I have no idea how deep it is, but there's only little few bits of gravel sticking through it. It looks like about a 10-foot pothole in length, which is extraordinary. You know, sometimes when you get to a place where, you know, the gravel road is washboard, then you can put some gravel down, you can get a grader out, and you can kind of improve it that way. I don't even know where you start here. This looks like you got to haul the whole thing apart because you just can't grade that. There's nothing to grade.
No. Well, they will grade it twice, I don't know, probably 3 times a year. But you can't grade it unless you cut out the holes that are there. And I'm not a civil engineer by any means, but unless you cut out the holes that are there, get under the holes, you're not getting rid of them. You're just plowing over, you're filling the holes, roughly filling them in. Sure, the first time it rains, the last time they graded it there before Christmas, well before Christmas, the next day we had rain, sure, the holes were there again the next day. Like, it's quite obvious that it's not right what's going on there. Like, this is enough, boy. Like, this is terrible. Like, I've been in the middle of nowhere down in central Newfoundland hunting and guiding in my truck. Sure, the roads are not anything near that, and the roads are hardly even being used. Like, I know we're in hard shape, our government, but boy, I'm going to tell you, this is a hard pill to swallow. And people say, well, you don't pay taxes. Well, I tell you right now, I pay lots of taxes. I work full time. There's 12 other full time live here families on that road where I am, and more who would like to go in there. And they're deterred by it. Like, what gives? I can't figure it out. Like, we're paying taxes. We pay taxes same as anybody else. We pay for the service we get, and we're not getting a service. And I've mentioned this before. I got a quote. If you go to a gas station to fill up your vehicle with gas and you find out you got all water, well, you can go back in and you can say, boy, you sold me water instead of gas. I want my money back and a repair. We're paying for a service there. Part of our infrastructure comes from our taxes, and we're getting nothing for it. And all simply because they wouldn't do 1 kilometre of the road. Not in the budget. I'm like, come on. The worst part of the road, they didn't even touch. Like, I don't know, boy. I'm flabbergasted. I really am. And there's a new government in here now. And I got faith in the new government because a change usually is as good as the rest. I'm no political stripe favor. I don't care if you're red, blue, green, orange. Makes no difference to me. Well, like, come on. All parties have been in power long enough, and they all know about this road. Like, come on, boys. It's an hour from town. There's people lives there. Like, an ambulance. Sure, if an ambulance had to take you in there, take you out over that road to bring you to a hospital somewhere, sure, they'd break you up trying to get you over the road. Like, does not fit. Does not fit. There's no excuse under God's son why that road is the way it is. And I'll stand by that forever. It's terrible.
Well, if people were looking at the pictures that I'm looking at, they'd agree with you in full, Jason. I appreciate the time. Thanks for doing it.
I appreciate the opportunity to speak, Paddy. And again, thank you very much. And I hope you have a great day. And talk to you again in the future.
Sounds
good.
Take
care.
All right.
Thanks, bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, and then, it just brings back to the conversation about road construction. And we spoke with Minister Petton yesterday about what has been the ballooning cost for road construction. 85% increase since 2019. Over $660,000 per kilometre these days. So, trying to figure out exactly what has contributed to that whopping big increase, we know everything costs more, whether it be labor and or materials and other inputs in the heavy civil industry. But 85% increase since 2019, I mean, obviously, what's that going to mean? It means either we're going to see another whopping increase in road construction budget, which has gone from $166 million in 2019 to over $320 million now, and we're going to get fewer kilometres done. It's as basic as that, isn't it? Unless they put way more money in, there's going to be far less road work conducted every paving season. Let's get a break in. When we come back, we're talking about, there we go, we're going to talk about road construction, and then whatever you want to talk about, don't go away. Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 4. Say good morning to Ward 4 Councillor here in town. This is Tom Davis. Tom, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Good morning.
I'll start off with a PSA about mini splits. I have a lot of them, and I will notice that my mini split in whatever in business or home is not heating as well. So inevitably I go and I pull out the filter, and it's plugged up with dust and whatever else is blown around the house or building. So I just encourage people at least every season to haul those things out and vacuum them out. It makes a huge difference. And people are experiencing, like Daryl earlier mentioned, that it's possible. I mean, he may be cleaning them regularly, but that can have a big impact on their efficiency.
No question. Yep. It's pretty easy to do, too.
Yeah, it is. A lot of people just don't think about it. And again, for people who've installed them, I mean, they're great savings. I know recently I saw an article where one of the local oil companies was saying how the price per BTU of heating for oil now and cost was about the same as electric baseboard heat. However, with a mini split, you can get up to 300, even as high as 400% efficiency, just because of the effect of the heat pump aspect. So even in the coldest, normal cold weather that you get in most of the island, not so much up in the big land, heat pumps are still way more efficient than baseboard heat. The worst they ever are is baseboard heat, although you may need to supplement it for some reason. But they should definitely on average be way more efficient than oil as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so last week I called in about the Monday morning garbage collection throughout the city, and the fact that the city facilities were closed, the province was closed, the Metrobus and Go Bus were off the roads, and we still had garbage collection. So I dug into it. I wanted to give people a bit of an update on it because it was a big question we had. And for people's reference, I didn't realize it. We all think we get our recycling every 2 weeks. But in actual fact, there's recycling picked up in every ward every week. It's just that they stagger it based upon the capacity of the equipment to be able to collect it. So this gets back to something we've talked about before, which is how people have a tendency to put their garbage out at night. And, during the summertime, as long as it's not windy, that's not the end of the world, although you're not supposed to. However, in the wintertime, there's still a lot of people who do that. And this is one of these situations where when they're weighing out whether they cancel garbage collection, just for everybody's reference, last Monday, 50% of the garbage bins were actually picked up. So in other words, 50% of people throughout the city still had their garbage cans out. And in a lot of cases, these garbage cans, especially the ones I took pictures of that were buried, for the most part, they're garbage cans that have been put out the night before. So we got a big problem. People who put their garbage cans, and there's a bunch of reasons why people might do that. But if you're putting it out the night before and there's any chance of heavy snow or wind, people need to take that into account. The wind is the big factor that the city uses for whether they cancel garbage collection. So they make that decision the night before. The city has access to more advanced weather forecasting as well, and they they kind of got it wrong, but again, but once the wheels were in motion and there was that many garbage cans out, it was a real catch-22 how to deal with it. And then, of course, the next thing was then we had to go around for the other people. And the other challenge is for people, a lot of people in the city don't produce that much garbage. Like my wife and I, we produce a bag every week or every 2 weeks. But when you drive around the city, you'll notice that garbage bins every week are overflowing. So, it depends on the demand of people. And that's the other thing we take into account is that people just don't have a place to put this garbage when they don't pick it up. So there is going to be a little bit more. I mean, the outcry that happened last Monday was not lost on people, and the investigation, we're putting in some other measures to try and avoid that kind of thing happening again. But I just want to give people an update on that one.
Yeah, wind is an obvious measure of whether or not we should be putting out the bins, but the circumstance where people couldn't even get their streets plowed out or have even a chance to shovel their driveways out, that was a questionable decision, but I suppose there's no winning.
No, you're right. And again, it's good to question these things. I do think that, with the questioning that happened, myself plus other residents who sent in, reasonable logic, it does help to keep us all accountable. And I just want to give people a report of what I learned.
Fair enough.
Now, getting into the cost of capital works, how many kilometers we're getting with the province. It also translates down to municipal level as well. It's very interesting when you look at the fact that the province increased its spending by 92% budget-wise, and the cost went up by 85%. And when you get into economics and you study that, some people might think, well, then there's, people are being dishonorable. But one of the challenges within the province is that there is a small number of companies that can do this kind of work, and there's a very short window. And especially during the pandemic and after the pandemic, the cost of inputs dramatically went up. In particular, the cost of asphalt went up by like 5 or 6 times. And that was driven by uncertainty and volatility in the oil market. The oil prices went up as well. The fact that there was a lot of governments that were stimulating and doing a lot of work. But the challenge is those prices never came down. So you had the minister on yesterday talking about how the fact that CPI is around, consumer price index is around 20% since 2019, and yet we had the prices of stuff going up 85%. So this is something that's a hot topic around the council table as well. And I believe we've arrived at the point where the prices have gone up and they're stuck. So yes, labor has gone up. For sure, the cost of buying new equipment has gone up. But the price of oil has come back down, and as a result, the price of the actual asphalt should come back down. But it's not happening because it's sticky.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to get prices to come back down. So the only way you combat this is government has to be prepared to just say no to jobs and be prepared to face the heat of saying, well, I'm sorry, that road's not going to get paved. There has to the only because the perception is that government's going to borrow as much money as it takes to pave the kilometers of road or to keep hospitals open or do whatever it takes, then the market has adjusted to that, whether it's suppliers, employees, and heavy civil. So the only way you fight that, and it does the same thing at the city, is we have to be prepared to say, these prices are too high. We have to say it out loud. They have to come back down. And the only way that's going to happen is out of necessity, because we're all competing for the same limited number of heavy civil people to do work, whether it's in the city or for the province. So, what I'm calling for is the province, whoever's in charge of that, to pick up the phone and call the municipalities and basically get together and say, we've got to get the market to adjust. And it's going to be difficult because again, margins have increased, but also there's a lot of things. There's probably inefficiencies and productivity may have dropped within the heavy civil people it may not all be going to profit. It probably isn't going to profit as well. The people who supply the asphalt to the province have also got that baked into. So, it's a big problem, but the province has to have the courage to take the leadership here and get people in a room. And because we just can't afford it. That's just reality. The taxpayers can't afford the situation we've got ourselves in.
And you talk about prices going up and not coming back to earth. The same thing inside the grocery store. I mean, whether we talk about supply chain interruptions, even though if you ask farmers, the biggest problem that they're facing is fire and floods and drought and insects. But consequently, the price of food has gone up. We're paying more for less. That's not coming back to earth. We're going to have to grapple with that. And you talk about the price of oil and the contributing factor regarding asphalt. There's an issue here that I don't know how much attention people pay to this, between budgets. But in the most recent provincial budget, they forecasted the value of the price of a barrel of oil at $73 US per barrel, with the exchange rate at, I think it was 69.7 cents, so we'll call it 70 cents. Oil is just around $64 today. It's actually up $1 over yesterday, but there's no reason to believe we're going to hit an annualized average of over $73. The exchange rate now, they're forecasting 70 cents. Exchange rate today is about 72 cents. Every cent adds up to about $30 million. So we've got a potential issue coming here at the provincial budget level. Remember, when they forecasted a deficit of $372 million, and then lo and behold, it skyrocketed to like $948 million, including all the big tobacco money, man, that financial reality is dire.
The reality is everybody has to realize that about 25 to 27% of every penny our provincial government spend is borrowed, indirectly or directly. And that's just reality, and it's unsustainable. And a lot of people, not just the heavy civil people, have to adjust to the fact that we are just writing checks that we cannot cash, and we're pushing it unfairly and immorally to future people. And it's off still. I mean, this whole economic death spiral is going to come to roost for the people who are alive right now. This is not some magical thing off in the future. As we remind people that 2015 and again in 2020, the province almost could not borrow money to make payroll. And then that needs to be, that's not like some fictitious thing. Both Dwight Ball's government twice almost could not make payroll. So, that's reality. But again, we all are in it together, and we all need to figure out the solutions together. And 40 people at MHAs aren't going to figure out by themselves, but we all need to come together to figure this stuff out.
Appreciate the time. Thanks, Tom.
Take care, everyone.
You too. Bye-bye. All right. Earlier in the program, talking about a status update regarding the proposed multifaceted, multicultural facility out in Galway, 4 NHL-sized hockey rinks, and the ability to play soccer and baseball and softball and what have you under the one roof of a 260,000 square foot facility. Jack Lee is one of the people behind that to talk about the Galway Arena. He's in the queue, and then you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 6 to say good morning to one of the people behind the proposed Galway Arena. That's Jack Lee. And good morning, Jack. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patrick. How are you this morning?
Very well, thanks. How about you?
That's kind.
So we've been talking about this inside my social circles, a bunch of the boys, of course, hockey players. Where are we with the status of progress regarding this proposed massive facility of 260,000 square feet?
Well, Patty, a project like this size certainly takes time, and there's lots of I's and T's to be crossed and dotted, and but it's still moving forward. A lot slower than we would have expected at the beginning, or we would have liked to see it moving faster. But when you're dealing with this type of project, it takes time. And to be honest with you, it takes a lot of money, and for us, we were still working away at it. With the whole plan when we originally started this was to have it ready for Canada Games, but that didn't come out the plan, as we know. And hopefully now we're back on track and working hard, and the people that are on this non-for-profit board are still engaged in it. And we've been talking to new government, and certainly we had lots of communication with the old government. And things are looking positive every day, and hopefully we will see some movement in the spring.
So we know the previous Liberal government put forward $500,000 regarding design work and plan for the new facility. What role, financially speaking, do you anticipate or need the provincial government to play for this to become a reality?
Well, it's we went them looking for a one-time grant, at the start of it, and and that's still the hope. And financially, numbers-wise, we have not got a commitment one way or the other how much it will be. But yes, there was a tender let, and there is some designs came back. But the original design that we had done, which still is on the table, we think that's the most responsible one and sensible one, and it houses all the sports that we need to. like, hockey, figure skating, curling, is a part of the process, and all the fieldhouse sports. It's so important, Pat. As you know, our weather is great all the time, so we don't need outdoor facilities. We need indoor facilities.
So it is going to include curling.
Oh, well, yeah, that was always in the plan. But how we work that into what the building is right now, that's something that wasn't included in the beginning. It was talked about. I met with Newfoundland and Labrador Curling Association, St. John's Curling Associations, and we're still planning on having curling. But the original plan was just for the 4 ice surfaces and the field house. But for whatever reason, when they start moving forward, sort of like the field house was a secondary item and curling was moved in, which we're okay with. But we have had communication with the curling association, so hopefully they will continue on and see what their plans are first, because at the end of the day, it has to make sense for the curling association too. Yeah,
because obviously when you lose Ballyhaley and their 4 sheets, it puts real pressure on the Remax Centre. So I imagine curlers would be happy if there's curling sheets included in the new facility.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, certainly that was never the intent to not to have any other sports. Like, we're hoping to put any sport in here. We're hoping to be able to house all sports, because, Pat, as you know, you're around the rinks and the other sports too. Like, there's such a need for this facility. And I've not ran across anybody in government, outside of government, any levels of government that know that there's no need for this. They all know how much we need this.
No doubt about it. Ice time is pretty precious, no question. So inside the 4 NHL-sized hockey rinks, how many of them would simply be practice facilities? Like out at the Glacier, there's one main rink for the games, although you can play on both surfaces, obviously, but one is much more practice devoted versus the bigger seated arena.
Yeah, well, we're not going to have a major seating arena, maybe 1,000, 1,200 seats max in one. The rest of them will be minor hockey rinks that you just suggested. And that's what it will be. It won't be. We're not in the business to compete with Mall 1 or Mary Brown Center, I should say. We're in the business of providing opportunities for the youth of the province to be able to play. And right now, we don't have the opportunities that they need.
Absolutely. There's a specific mention to the multicultural facet of it. What does that mean?
Well, it's going to be a multicultural facility because it's going to incorporate all kinds of sports, all kinds of cultures throughout Newfoundland and Labrador. This is not going to be a facility for the city of St. John's. It's going to be a facility for the whole region. And I even go further than that. I said this is a facility for Newfoundland and Labrador to be able to train our young athletes, to keep our young athletes home instead of having to move away for training and stuff like that. We're going to be able to do it here. It also incorporates a restaurant bar. It incorporates a sports medicine clinic, rehab, pro shop, hot yoga studios, a hanging walking track or some form of walking track for the seniors in the province when our climate weather is not suitable to be training or walking outside for them. They can go inside. There's going to be a room based on the culture of our province.
Fair enough. Is there a preliminary price tag that you can float?
The prices that we had in COVID went up. We're figuring this is between $90 and $110 million for the whole facility to be complete.
Appreciate the time. Once it starts, it'll take anywhere from the time the groundwork done till fully complete. It should take 24 months. Appreciate the time this morning, Jack. Anything else you'd like to mention? No, it's good. I'm just glad that we're getting some, people moving on this now, because I know the need and you know the need, and certainly the province of Newfoundland and Labrador will benefit from this, and the youth of our province will be able to use the facility that's first class across the country. Appreciate the time. Good luck with it. Thanks, buddy. Okay, Jack, bye-bye. For anyone in and around minor hockey, you got teams that, say, for instance, will be part of Northeast, living down at Torbay, going to practice in the Ghouls. So there is a need for an additional ice surface. I believe in the initial thoughts of the Jack Byrne Arena, there was 2 ice sheets involved there, and then I guess it became cost prohibitive, and consequently it was just reduced to 1, even though it's a lovely facility. So I do think there's a need for additional ice around here, and how that gets financed and what that looks like, that's certainly part of the conversation as well. Let's go to line number 1. William, you're on the air.
Yeah, Patty. I'm calling about Harbour Mill Road. I'm from Arbormouth, but I live on Wonderland Road. I got a summer house down there, and the road is not fitting. They're not doing nothing with it down there, and the boss goes on and picks up the kids, and it's not fit. The shoulder of the road is gone, man, and you have to go right, when someone's coming, you have to go right off the road to get past on. The humps, big humps, and they're not doing nothing about it. I don't know if we're snow time council down there, but they paid part of Little Bay, but they didn't pay Arbormouth.
So where's the road? Pardon me.
Arbormouth.
Okay.
Fortune back.
Yep. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
ridiculous.
The pictures I saw of the Markland Road here this morning are unbelievable, and we hear stories like this all the time. And it's not just about the surface of the road itself; it's also about the shoulders. It's also about the tree trimming. It's about all these things when we talk about the quality and the safe travel of a variety of roads.
Yes, yeah. The shoulder's gone, and there's big humps up there. You can't one up there. You can't go over. If you go over your car, you tear the base pan over. You have to go on the other side.
And, you know, with the numbers we've seen regarding road construction, some of the bad roads that are in need of repair are probably going to wait longer, simply because of money.
Yeah. They ain't no time cancer down there now. Now, I don't know if that's why, right? But the boss goes picks up the kids down there. I mean, they think they do something about it. They paid right to Arbormouth. I don't know why they didn't go. They paid a little bit. I don't know why they didn't go right to Arbormouth.
What would the distance there be? What was the distance between the two?
I'd say about 15 minutes.
Okay.
About 15, 20 minutes.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I don't know why, but you know, when we had the government with the early tenders was helpful, then the 5-year plan was helpful, even, you know, a bit of wiggle room for emergencies that come up regarding roads reconstruction. But all of those plans are in jeopardy just given the price tag. I mean, it's hard to believe. Yeah. I'm like, the price of everything is up, and people know that. But 85% increase in road construction costs since 2019 is going to be a big problem for the province into the future. A big problem for municipalities too.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, yeah.
Anything else you'd like to talk about this morning?
The wind, geez, we're getting some wind. Yeah, my God, I fell boat off me roof. I had to get it fixed, and off me garage, and shingles come off my roof. I got to wait till the winter's over. My roof is leaking now. Me room was leaking, but a little bit when it rains. The wind's certain, but I got to wait till the winter's over because the shingles is not going to stick like this, right?
Yeah, it's a hard time of year to suffer some of that kind of damage. And we're hearing reports of damage because of the wind in various parts of the province. It was howling in my neighbourhood. That's all I know. It kept me up the whole bloody night.
Yes, it kept me up, yeah. And my room was leaking the other day. I got pots put down there like it's just dripping, right? It's not pouring, but it's dripping when the wind's a certain way because it's called shingles gone. But I got to wait now until the winter's over to do it. Appreciate
the time, William. Good luck with it all.
Yes, you have a good day, huh?
You too.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Yeah, same to you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. That road construction issue, look, just imagine, when the budget in 2019 for road construction is $160-ish million, and now it's over $320 million, we're just going to get far fewer kilometres done. And you can ask anybody in just about every nook and cranny in this province about the need for road work to be done, and people will put up their hands. We need it done here, we need it done here, we need it done here. And a lot of those hands are going to have to be brought back down, because unless the province throws copious millions of dollars, additional dollars at road work, then we've got a problem that's just growing. And someone via email asked me what the reference was to the price of a barrel of oil in the provincial budget. You know, there's going to be, it's always a pretty volatile commodity, and it's a global commodity, and there's lots of pressure points, whether it be OPEC or the new developments in Venezuela and otherwise. But when we see the deficit, even including the big tobacco money, balloon to about $948 million, we also have to include what it's going to look like next year regarding the forecast on the price of a barrel of oil, because that has pretty big implication on the outcomes for the budget. The province used $73 as the forecasted price of oil, Brent crude, US dollars, with the exchange rate at around 70 cents. Exchange rate today is around 72 cents, but oil hovers around $64. And the $73 is an annualized average. So not a huge implication if you look at it daily, but it's starting to add up to where we do indeed know we're approaching that fiscal year end, which is March 31st for the provincial government, and that price of barrel of oil, it seems highly unlikely we're going to hit that average at $73. Let's go ahead and get a break for the news. Today is a good day to get on the show. If you're in and around town, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. We're taking a break, and then we're coming back.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. So there are questions being posed to me, and I'm not so sure I can answer them, regarding North Atlantic's want to proceed with their green hydrogen play. So be it. So they're going to build a wind farm, a road network, and a hydrogen plant in the Sunnyside Come By Chance area. They've got a market for it inside their own operation. So they're talking about a fairly modest proposal when compared to some of the other onshore wind proposals, which have pretty much stalled at this moment in time. So they're talking about 324 megawatts, 45 turbines, and a plant that's capable of producing about 30,000 tons of hydrogen. The water supply from Inkster's Pond. So we know that they've got operations right around the world, including a refinery that they just bought in France last fall. So they're going to move away from using the grey hydrogen currently used at that facility to the green hydrogen they're going to produce here. So they've got a built-in market inside their own operations for that particular product. We know the facts are pretty clear here, based on the price of green hydrogen and the lack of offloading infrastructure, that the other proponents that have come to town in all different pockets of the province, their plans for now have stalled in full. They've said pretty much from the onset, unless they were able to secure at least 10 years in length of power purchase agreements, that they wouldn't be proceeding anyway. You know, it's all about access to some of these big federal dollars, which is a point that people have made repeatedly in my email, is that, of course, if, it doesn't matter if it's in this country or anywhere else, if there are government programs that see the ability for huge tax credits, and in this case, in the world of green hydrogen, up to 40%, and that would all be based, of course, on the source for the production. So wind, as the renewable that it is, would see maximum tax credit versus if you were using coal or coke-fired generation to produce the green hydrogen. So, of course, when that type of money and other financial supports are there, then companies and individuals are going to see it, and they're going to craft proposals to try to take advantage of it and consequently boost profit margins. I mean, it's pretty basic stuff on that front. So whether green hydrogen ever has a future, I have no earthly idea. But for North Atlantic, it does, because they have a baked-in market for their product. That does not mean that wind turbines might not be coming to a neighborhood near you. Again, I have no crystal ball, and consequently I have no earthly idea about the most current proposal from John Risley is ever going to manifest itself. I don't know. I mean, it seems like a pretty massive undertaking with zero commentary coming from the other proponents, which he would require to satisfy even what they're referring to as phase one of his plan for this Atlantic Canada Clean Grid, which is a rebrand, I guess, of the Atlantic Loop. Like, even with the 150 turbines on the Port Peninsula as currently proposed, only generates 1 gigawatt of wind. The proposal, as per Mr. Risley, says that they would need 5 gigawatts of onshore wind here, 5 gigawatts of offshore wind in Nova Scotia, just to satisfy the initial phase of a $75 billion project, including $16 billion worth of transmission on land and subsea cable. So, again, it sounds like pretty aspirational stuff. He understands the skepticism out there amongst the general public, and rightfully so. All of the big ballyhoo regarding green hydrogen, even the federal government's forecast, they're talking about the value between $11 and $12 trillion by mid-century. They themselves downgraded that potential to about $2 trillion, which probably is still a fair dose of cockeyed optimism on that number. So whether or not it's going to actually happen, I have no earthly idea. But I did ask the minister responsible for the environment and climate change, Chris Tibbs, on this program yesterday as to whether or not this current proposal requires going back to the drawing board regarding environmental impact assessments. And you have to think it does. Because when we talked transmission as part of the initial World Energy GH2 plan, the transmission was simply going to go from the Port Peninsula to Stephenville, as opposed to try to interconnect all of the different locations where the wind proposals were in place and currently little to no work ongoing. Is that changes everything, because the environmental impact regarding that level of transmission on land really does sound like we have to go directly back to the drawing board, because it's not just about the location of the turbines, it's also about the location of transmission, of which this is not the same thing. And then I've brought this forward a couple of times, and maybe people are going to be wanting to pick up on it, is they make direct reference to Hydro-Quebec. So, Hydro-Quebec is kicking every power generation tire out there, including this particular yet to realize itself proposal here. But as it looks regarding the Upper Churchill MOU, which we're not going to have a referendum on, a referendum, if it ever happens, is going to be with the definitive agreements. So I really need to understand the timeline here a little bit clearer. They're talking about, April was once the arbitrary deadline for contracts to be signed. That's obviously not going to happen, because even the 3-person independent panel that has now been struck to evaluate the MOU with an expanded terms of reference, expanded mandate, that report's not even due back until April. And then, and I guess only then, will we revitalize the negotiations, which seemingly have stopped. As far as we know, they've at least gone down to a trickle. So then you start to negotiate definitive agreements, which is going to take some time, obviously. Then the contracts have to come back to the House of Assembly for debate. Then there's got to be some sort of awareness campaign, an educational campaign for the general public if we're going to be voting on this thing. And then it's got to be ratified. So how does that get us through October? And again, for clarification, nobody's suggesting rushing into a deal for the sake of it. I'm not saying it. I don't think anybody's necessarily saying that. But we do know, come October, if there is no contract, there will be no deal, period. So I'll just throw this out there one more time for the folks in the Premier's office. With public disclosure of a variety of things, including Michael Wilson's unredacted resignation letter, which was a good thing to do, please, when we talk about the education that we all need regarding the implications of these potentials on the Churchill River and what a referendum might look like, even though we don't know what a question in the referendum might be, is while we release all that information regarding these eventual contracts, is send out that document that's already been produced for the provincial government so that we all know exactly what happens in 2041. Because for the vast majority of people, we don't know what happens in 2041. Equity on the river doesn't change. It's an opportunity to renegotiate price. What else might be involved in 2041? I'm not entirely sure, but the provincial government knows because they had a careful legal and economic evaluation of that particular moment in history or moment in time. Let's get a break in. When we come back, plenty of time for you. Don't go away. Welcome back. Interesting question posed via email. It'd be great if some of the emailers would be callers, but hey, anyway. So it's talking about the road construction issue. And originally, when gas tax came to town, and of course, a few things inside the world of how we tax gasoline or other fuels. So for starters, the 10-cent excise tax federally, that hasn't changed since it was first imposed. What has changed is, of course, the carbon tax has gone away for that type of gas for us normal users. But it's the HST at the end, so it's kind of tax on tax on tax. And where I'm going with this is the gas tax was brought forward as a way to cover road work. For the longest time, the government always brought in way more gas tax than they actually spent on road construction. It's probably not the case anymore because, remember, they removed half of the provincial portion tax, so about 8 cents, just a little over 8 cents per litre. So that constituted about $120-ish million in lost revenue to the provincial government. That halving of the tax remains in place. So what does that mean for the road construction issue? If we're talking about to get the similar number of kilometres done per road work season, does that mean somewhere into the future we might see the resumption of that other half of the gas tax? Maybe. Then the question also being asked by this one emailer was about electric vehicles. We do know they are growing in popularity, and it's not for everybody. Not everyone has a life circumstance that can accommodate an electric vehicle, but his question is a good one. If electric vehicles are being used and they continue to grow in popularity and consequently not buying gas and so consequently not paying gas tax, how does that jibe with roadwork and roadwork budgets? It's a good question. So I think similar questions have been asked by people like, for instance, the consumer advocate, Dennis Brown, regarding electric vehicles. We as taxpayers, regardless of whether or not you're using an electric vehicle, we are paying for the rapid charge stations along the highway. And apparently they have grown in numbers. I've never used them because I don't have an electric vehicle, so I'm not so sure how efficient or accessible they are. But Same question being asked by this emailer, is if EV users are not paying any gas tax, what does that mean for gas tax totals? And what does that mean for their contribution as EV users into road construction? That's a pretty good question. I don't know. I think the last question in his email is, will they be paying a separate tax because they are not paying for gasoline, and the gas tax is, generally speaking, introduced to cover road work? It's a good question. I really don't know the answer to it. Then the next email I read also poses a very good question, which I've posed several times already this calendar year. For instance, yesterday was the first time, I think, that we've spoken to a member of Cabinet since we came back on air. And the question is, why isn't the House open? Good one. We were told initially upon the election results being in, we remember that there was 3 judicial recounts requested. Only one went through. That's all Paul Dinn remained the winner out in his riding, his district, over Dan Babbitt. But we were told once all of those judicial recount decisions were made and the last members were sworn in, then the House would reopen. But it hasn't. And the emailer is not wrong in wondering why that's not the case at this moment in time. When are we going to see it reopened? You know, Jim Dinn and others, when Premier Wakeham decided to pause the current ongoing negotiations, have a different thought on independent review of the UC MOU. You know, when the Liberals brought the plan forward, they opened up the House for 4 days. There was lots of questions asked. There was people representing the government, JP Morgan Chase, Power Advisory and others, Jennifer Williams at Newfoundland Labrador Hydro. So it probably would have been a very good idea to have a clearer understanding of where we were going, to reopen the House, even if just for that issue, in addition to every other issue that the people of the province are thinking about and talking about. So I think it would be in our collective best interest if there was indeed even an emergency debate, which probably should have happened before we went back into this independent review. And I don't know where that's going to land. But of course, I knew the email along the lines of, hey, you're just basically trying to fast track a deal. I'm not. Plus, I have no authority. I'm not involved in the negotiating team. I'm not an elected member of government. But I'm just throwing out timelines for our consideration. And it's timelines that have been put forward by the Premier, timelines have been put forward by the government in Quebec as well. I get it. The arbitrary deadline for definitive agreements was exactly that. It was arbitrary. There's still some months after April for things to get concluded. And again, just painting a timeline picture here, this is not a thumbs up or thumbs down or thumbs sideways on the deal itself or the possibility of a deal itself. Just walk myself through it one more time. The independent review report will come back in April. And at that moment, I guess we pick up the negotiations once again to try to arrive at definitive contracts. That's going to take some time. Then the contracts are going to come back to the House of Assembly for debate therein. Then they're going to be disclosed in whatever form or fashion to the members of the general public, because we're told that there's going to be a referendum on those definitive agreements. That's going to take time. So whether we like it or not, come October, by law, there's going to be an election in Quebec. And I know people will be yelling at the radios and saying, like, who cares about Quebec? I get it. I don't really care much about Quebec either. But the fact of the matter is, as the other side of the table here, what happens in Quebec is part of the conversation, whether we like it or not. So they're going to have an election. And I take the polls with a grain of salt, like most of you do. But it looks pretty clear at this moment in time, unless something earth-shattering happens, Legault and his party are out, and in come the Parti Québécois, and their leader from day one, what's his name, Palado or something? He has said right away, the deal is embarrassing to Quebec, it's embarrassing to Hydro-Quebec, and consequently there will not be a deal based on the current structure of the MOU. So that's it. That's just a timeline conversation. Whether people think it's a good thing or a bad thing, it's just a thing. And also picking up on the Prime Minister's travel schedule here. All right. When people were clamoring for markets to be diversified and opened up in other parts of the world, given the reliance that we do indeed have on the United States, or at least we did, it would have been hard to avoid or to ignore a possibility to do more business with China. China has a bunch of problems, and China has been a problem in this country on a variety of fronts. But they're an economic superpower. So whether it be issues regarding canola, or whether it be issues regarding their energy needs, of which they have, I suppose it's pragmatic to try to thread the needle and come up with some sort of economic path forward with China, because there's also going to be a trip to India. I mean, we're talking about billions of people with billions of needs. So I suppose it's the right thing to do, but how it's going to work, I guess we'll all find out. Don't anticipate the Prime Minister coming home with any sort of signed deal from this particular trip to China. And then the point that people have picked up on is it's not the only stop on this particular tour. After he leaves Beijing, I think they're in Beijing for the meetings, is going to Qatar. And what's on the agenda there? I would imagine much of the same, trade. And then, of course, what people really hate about this travel agenda is then the last stop before returning home is Davos, Switzerland, for the World Economic Forum meetings. Now, the person at the helm of the World Economic Forum has changed. Klaus Schwab is out, and people have various opinions about the World Economic Forum and the actual impact they have on governing Canada or other members and representatives who have been speaking at or attending the World Economic Forum meetings over the years. And the Prime Minister is going and is going to speak. But notably, the same thing could be said for the President of the United States. He's the keynote speaker at this year's World Economic Forum. He did appear last year, but it was via, I guess, Zoom. But apparently we're told he's going to be there in person this year to make a presentation. I suppose we can go by history and figure that it's going to be very similar to the speech and the tone and the tenor when he spoke in front of the United Nations General Assembly, whenever that was, X number of months ago, which was really quite something. But yeah, that's the Prime Minister's play, is China, Qatar, Davos, and home. And then with the pending trip to India, sometime after the budget is tabled in that country, which is the February the 1st, I'm pretty sure. And also to that, it was just a question, and I'd talk about documented history, is about how FIPA has worked since it was ratified in 2014. It took 2 years to do so. The general public were not informed. We were only told after it was signed, and after it was signed meant another 31 years, regardless of what people thought or how it was working. We were locked in for 31 years. It came across, I guess, in some people's minds as some sort of anti-Harper thing. No, it's an actual thing. It's a just political thing. It's an economic reality. So that's why we added into the conversation, because it does indeed have some implications regarding operations in this country. And whether or not we benefit near the extent that the Chinese benefit here, I think is probably a very fair question to ask, regardless who you plan on voting for, regardless of what party you support. So it's just part of the reality when we talk about our economic relationships with China, because we have a locked-in deal. Does that get addressed on this particular trip? Unlikely. Why would they back out of a deal that is good for them, maybe not as good for us, when they've got us for 31 years? I don't know how that's not part of the conversation. All right, let's get a break in for the news. When we come back, we're speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 1. Trent, you're on the air.
Howdy, Daily, buddy. How you doing?
Doing okay. How about you?
Good, boy. I'm battling a little bit of a cold here, so if I'm hard to understand, I apologize.
Sounds good.
The last time that me and you spoke, I called in talking about junior curling, and I told you I'd keep you in the loop on all the goings on about junior curling. Like I said it before, and I'll say it again. It seems like junior curling in this province falls through the cracks with media coverage and just coverage in general. So I just want to call in and just give you guys a little update on why this happened the last little bit with junior curling. We'll go back to the over Christmas break. We had a U20 provincial championships. That was a great turnout. It was amazing curling the whole weekend. It was really enjoyable to watch. Team Callie Locke and Team Simon Perry won their respective divisions, and they will be going on to represent Newfoundland and Labrador at the U20s in March. Point of interest on Callie Locke's team is Brad Guju's daughter, and she's going to be, in my opinion, one of the up-and-coming stars to watch in junior curling or in any kind of curling in this province. Then last weekend alone, we had the provincial Scotties Playdowns. It was amazing curling to watch. Once again, a junior team, Callie Locke, she put her team in, and they went right to the finals. They lost on a shot by mere inches, I'm going to say. I'm not very good at estimation, but I want to say they only lost by mere inches. So Callie Locke put in a great effort in that tournament also. That team was won by, I forget her name, Mackenzie Mitchell. She won the tournament here, so they will be going to the Scotties to represent Newfoundland and Labrador at the Scotties. And this past weekend alone, we had the out in Gander, we had the U20 provincial championships, U18s, and that was a great turnout. it was enjoyed. The Gander came out and showed their support, and the hospitality that Gander done for the curling community while we were out there was amazing. There was no lack of food at the curling club. Volunteers galore, and the U18s were won by Megan Blanford, and Team Zach French are going to Timmins, Ontario to represent the U18s to represent Newfoundland and Labrador.
Awesome. I really appreciate the update. You know, I think back to 2006 when Team Guju won at the Turin Olympics, and I really thought that was going to see an explosion in uptake of curling around the province. Then, lo and behold, just a couple of years later, one of the curling clubs out in Central closed, and curling ranks did not improve or explode the way I thought they would. I know curling's super strong here in the province, and the pressures on the Remax Centre here in this area with the loss of the 4 sheets at Ballyhaley has made a difference, but I see some good news regarding some junior curlers here. You mentioned a couple. I'll add into it Team Tipple and others who look like they've got a pretty promising future as well.
They do. All the teams, the curling in this province is in a very, very good shape. It's going to be hard to come up, especially on the men's side. It's going to be hard to come up and follow in Brad's footsteps, and I don't think anybody expects that to happen. But we do have a lot of good teams in this province. Like you just said. Team Tipple is going to be an upcoming team. Zach French's team is going to be up and coming. Solomon Perry, I think, is going to be the next one to watch out of this province. I think they have a really good shot at winning the Briar Playdowns, and if they do, I think they have the possibility of doing some damage. And I forgot to throw in there, but Solomon Perry and Kelly Locke are also going away representing Memorial University at the AUS Olympic Championships. So that's another accomplishment for him. So the curling is in a good spot, but we did suffer a big loss when Ballyhaley closed down their 4 sheets because the Remax Center is at max capacity. And I heard you earlier talking to Jack Lee, and that's why I sent you that tweet asking him what is the curling outlook. And then I'll reply back. I mean, it's not going to work out there unless he did say curling was on the radar, but it's not going to work unless curling has its own standalone ice, because it's no good to lay down curling ice, go out, shave it down for hockey, then go back and repebble it for curling. It's not going to work like that. Curling needs its standalone ice surfaces.
It does, no question. And, that said, the first time I ever threw a curling stone, I was wearing my hockey equipment because we were just about to play a game out in Clarenville right after they were curling on the ice, the hockey ice. So you're right. That's not how...
It don't work like that, right? Curling needs its own standalone ice, because if any team in this province wants the possibilities of going away to represent us on the national stage, they need to have the best that we can offer. And playing curling on hockey ice is not going to work.
No, of course not. And, you mentioned who might be able to fill Brad Gushue and Mark Nichols' shoes. I'll throw Mark in there. Well, if anyone ever does, that's going to be something else, because I think it's fair to say that Brad and Mark are 2 of the best curlers of a generation in the world. I mean, just remarkable careers they've had.
Well, I'm going to give you a funny story here now, and I'm not tooting. My daughter plays curling, and they just played in the U18 tournaments. And a couple of weeks ago, Brad is always over at the curling club watching his 2 daughters play, and they are amazing talent to watch. They both of them have a bright future. And my daughter was playing. Actually, Brad's daughter got their team called Team Guju 2.0. So my daughter and her team was playing Team Guju 2.0, and after she came in off the ice and we were driving home, my daughter Eve was in the back seat, and she said, "Mom, Dad," she said, "that was very interesting." We said, "What was that?" She said, "I just had the best curler in the world, front row seat." She said, "watching me play." She said, "I don't know how to explain that." And it's true. People don't know how to react to that. But, when he goes over there and watches the kids play, that just shows, what kind of person he is.
Yeah, I mean, it must be inspirational to have someone like Brad Gushue just around the junior curlers. Just a great stat I'm going to throw out there for people's interest. If you look at the longest pro careers in North American pro sports, on that list, Aaron Rodgers, of course, quarterback now playing with Pittsburgh, 21 seasons. Rich Hill, 21 seasons. He currently pitches with the Dodgers. Then there's Brent Burns, 22 seasons. He's a defenseman, of course, hockey player. LeBron James, 23 seasons. 25 seasons, the longest active pro career in North American sports, Brad Gushue, 25 years.
Yeah. And
Amazing.
I tell you, like he put this province on the map, and like I said, we are in a good shape come the future to still continue to represent this province, because currently it is strong in this province. We just need to pick it up across the province. In my opinion, there can be more curling clubs across this province. I know Stephenville is having trouble getting theirs up and going. They're always running into delays and stuff. And Port aux Basques always puts a team in. I mean, Dave Thomas always comes across with his junior curling team and his senior team, and he plays in all kinds of tournaments. So Port aux Basques is putting in an amazing effort. Gander is always putting in an amazing effort. But like I said, we need to see more curling clubs pop up around this province, and try to expand this sport a little bit more. To me, try to expand it beyond the old. I don't want to put this paraphrase on it, but I like to see it expanded beyond the overpass, if that's a technical term to use. And
it's a fair one to use. Trent, appreciate the time and the update. Thanks for doing it.
And just one quick little note, I want everybody, hopefully people in Gander are listening, and maybe and all your listeners today are listening, that come February, the juniors will be heading back to Gander again for the U16s. So I encourage everybody to just follow along online. Lots of teams are going to have their own YouTube channels and pages to stream the game. So, and anybody in Gander, drop by and drop in and watch some great curling, because it's going to, for U16s, these guys are their next tier of players to come up, and it's going to be a great bit of curling.
Good stuff. Thanks a lot, Trent.
All right, Patty, have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye. And we do know that Brad Goodhue has said that this is his last season. And just a tremendous career, to say the very least. One of the winningest and one of the very best curlers. And I hate leaving Mark Nichols out of the conversation, because even if we think back to the Olympics, I mean, the shot that really turned the tide in the gold medal game was Nichols. He's just an extraordinary player. That upweight material he's able to manage is just terrific. And so Goodhue gets to go out with a potential big bang, playing at at Mary Brown Centre in the Briar. But big thanks to Brad for all he's accomplished, him and Mark, and all the other members. There's been lots of people rotate in and out of the lead and second spots for Goodhue. Let's get a break, and when we come back, Loretta's there to talk about the seniors. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Loretta, you're on the air.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm doing okay, thank you. How about you?
Good. The reason why I'm calling is I heard on the radio that anyone on old age, you can receive a $400 check. Do you know how I can go about that, and you have to fill out a form? Where do I go to get a form?
So it depends on what we're talking about. So if you're talking about the Aging Well grant of $400, that's one thing, but there's also a senior's benefit, which you don't have to apply for. Is if you file your taxes and you satisfy the income eligibility threshold, you're going to be okay. But let me see if I can get you a number for the Aging Well grant.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem at all. All right, Newfoundland, there it is. All right, I know, that didn't get me anything. Okay, here we go. Aging Well grant 2026. Let's see if there's a telephone number. Yes, no, I know. It simply just has online opportunities for applying. Okay, if you need help completing your application. Okay, let me give you this number. Hopefully this helps. So
okay, then.
It's 709 651
651
62 73. Yep.
Oh, thank you. That's wonderful.
Happy to help, Loretta. Good luck.
Okay, and Happy New Year to you and your family.
Thank you, and Happy New Year to you and yours as well.
Okay, have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. And look, when we try to describe some of the pots of money that are out there, if and when the checks don't flow, not much I can say or do about that necessarily, but there's been plenty of questions asked of me about the seniors benefit. So I can only give you the information that I have. Insofar as how it did not get paid to some people on the 5th of January when the GST rebate came out, I don't know. Because some people say they got it, and some people say they didn't. So it all comes in the one check. So I guess we have to it'd be helpful if there was a breakdown associated with the check about what was the GST rebate and what was the seniors benefit. So we can only tell you about what they've done and the expanded eligibility threshold. Okay. The expansion, here's how it goes. Whether you're a single or a couple, Seniors with a family net income of up to $30,078, it used to be $29,402. They're eligible to receive the maximum benefit of $1,551. That's an increase from $1,516. The amount of the benefit gets phased out at a rate of just about 11.5% as net income increases between $30,078 all the way to $43,380. So, if you earn up to, or your net family income is up to $43,380, you do still qualify for a portion of the benefit, not the maximum benefit, because the maximum benefit is only if you have net family income of $30,078 or less. You have to be 64 years of age by the 31st of December of the taxation year. So these funds benefits are administered by the Canada Revenue Agency, paid with the federal GST credit. So the first check of this this calendar year was the 5th of January. And I really don't know, and I cannot answer a question as to why some people got it and some people did not. But that's the eligibility issues as we've been talking about. Also, there was a pledge made on the campaign trail about doubling the Aging Well grant from $400 to $800. I suppose that's going to have to wait until the Tories' first budget comes down, whenever that's going to be, sometime in the spring, generally speaking, end of March, early April. So I guess that's where it's finally going to be decided as to whether or not that's the reality for that Aging Well grant. And one of the things associated with this, which I always thought was kind of petty, to be honest, is people were encouraged to keep receipts. I mean, if you use the $400 to get your driveway shoveled or the grass mown or groceries delivered or whatever, I mean, not all of the people doing this maybe are going to even provide receipts. So let's not be so silly to think that we're going to have people working for the provincial government chasing around folks who are able to avail of that $400. I mean, they've got limited income or a fixed income already. So chasing them around to make sure they spent the $400 on that, as opposed to maybe some of it went to a night at bingo or whatever. We're going to have to let people spend it, however. I mean, I understand that it's there for a specific reason, and it would be nice if everyone who applies for the monies got it and used it for those types of practical aging at home or aging well purposes. But we can't spend the money on people working for the province going around checking receipts on the Aging Well grant, even though you're encouraged to do so. But let's hope that it is not something into the future where they're actually going to be chasing people around for that kind of stuff. And then, I guess there were people that are maybe half listening at some moment while we're talking about things here on the show. But one of the issues I brought up this morning was some of the related matters, because we're going to have to try to figure out how to square this circle. While there may be more movement into the future to provide people the supports they need to stay in their homes longer, because all levels of government talk about aging in place, aging at home. But then we have to understand how we're going to consider things like loneliness and isolation. I mean, these are very real things. For anyone listening to the program this morning who is experiencing either or both, you understand what it's meant to your life. So while you age in place, you're in your home longer in life, and that's actually happening here in the country. But when people become lonely and people are isolated, it comes with impacts to their physical and their mental health. So how are we going to try to figure that out? I only brought it up this morning because I hear from people who admit as much via email that they are living by themselves and they are lonely and their children don't live in that area, and maybe their spouse is dead and maybe their friends have passed or whatever the case may be. And so it feels like they might use me as someone just simply to talk with or to email with, which is perfectly fine by me. But we have to understand all of these implications of the loneliness and of isolation. This is research that's been done far and wide. This is not reading between the lines. They're talking about the increased risk associated with a variety of different things. Heart disease, stroke, type 2 diabetes, depression, anxiety, self-harm, dementia, earlier deaths. So when it comes time for me, I'm hoping to be able to stay in my home as long as possible, like most people. Now, some people think that maybe there's a better life to be had in something like a long-term care setting. And fair enough, I'm sure lots of people are enjoying their life and the amount of activities and people around in a personal care home or in a long-term care facility. But there's still certainly plenty of people that would just like to remain at home in familiar surroundings, closer by their buddies. whatever the case may be. So we're going to have to try to square both of those at the same time. And how that's going to work, I'm not entirely sure. And at the same time we're talking about that issue, I brought forward an issue regarding elder abuse because we hear the stories. And just sometimes we're all so busy, it's hard to be mindful of things that are not right in front of you, not inside your own 3-foot bubble. So to be aware of what's happening on that front, I was just trying to be helpful insofar as understanding that there are people who are on the receiving end of elder abuse in this country. And it's far more common than we think. National reports estimate that somewhere possibly in the neighborhood of up to 10% of seniors are experiencing some sort of elder abuse, and it comes in many forms and fashions, whether it be neglect, financial abuse, physical, sexual, emotional, being coerced financially speaking. And the biggest problem with all of that, it's all bad enough when that happens, but we also know that a significant percentage of that is perpetrated by a loved one. Well, that's not even the right way to put it, by someone in their family, because you can't love your senior if you're going to abuse them in any front. So the only reason I brought it up is, for us to be aware of it and to recognize the signs, and if and when you see some of those signs, to get involved in the conversation. So that's the reason we brought those two things forward, because we know that we have plenty of people in their senior years that listen to this program. So, and for those of you who are not senior, to be aware of what's happening is probably and hopefully just going to be helpful into the future while we recognize those signs. And we're not considering, people meddling in other people's lives, getting involved in other people's business, because nobody's advocating that. But to recognize that there might indeed be a problem facing a senior that you know or has belonged to your family, that's the reason we brought it up, because we know it happens, and to just ignore it just means it's going to happen even more frequently into the future. All right, let's check in on the Twitter box before we run out of time. We're a VOCM open line. You can follow us there. I don't know what I've done with my interface here, but it's completely out of whack. Email address is openline@vocm.com, and we get plenty of those. But, of course, the best way to interact with the show, in my personal opinion, is when you give us a shout. All right, good show today. Big thanks to all hands, all the callers, listeners, emailers, tweeters. You're all right. We will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.